Lockouts at dusk, confessions at noon. My name is Marcus, and my business card says facilities director, which is a polite way of saying I talk a skyscraper into cooperating 8 hours longer than it wants to. I manage a building that thinks it's a ship, 43 floors, 4,000 people on a weekday, a lobby that rehearses neutrality, elevators that practice moods. On paper, I oversee maintenance schedules, security contracts, vendor wrath. In practice, I translate appetite. Tenants want miracles. Owners want rent. The structure wants to be left alone. I carry a key ring that could outvote a small council, a phone that mistakes urgency for intimacy, and a torque wrench with my initials scratched into the handle, because the men before me taught me inscriptions are ballast. I live with Leon. He's an art handler who makes other people's investments pretend to be courage, white gloves, soft voices, crates that carry the rumor of the hand that built them. He comes home with splinters like confetti in his sleeves and says things like gravity is a story painters tell themselves. We have a rule written on a crooked index card on the fridge. Say it by noon. We made it after a winter of midnight honesty that trained us for bigger lies. Noon is graceless. That's why it works. The Tuesday the chillers behaved and I didn't, I was on the roof arguing with a condenser that thinks drama is a maintenance practice when my phone lit up with the joint email Leon and I use for deliveries. Thank you for your stay, the Ashbury. Time, 12:083:02. Points, 200 added. The email was a locksmith picking my ribs. I didn't call. Our second rule is for everything not yet a disaster, 2 loops around the block before nomming it. My block is a rectangle around the loading dock, a strip of sincerity in a city that prefers carpet. I walked it twice. A courier dragged a pallet jack like regret. A woman in a blazer practiced not being the villain in her own day. The generator hummed the sentence machines favor when they decide to be cruel. You already know. At 1, the tenant in 3207 called to say her door wouldn't read her badge. That's normal on a week when the access control software forgets to respect birthdays. I took the master up myself, because moving through a building with an excuse is one of the small freedoms I still respect. The door opened to a reception area that wanted to be warmer than the budget allowed. A man was waiting at the desk with a smile in the shape of patience. He introduced himself as Cadden Wells, a consultant who made enterprises remember their manners. His suit was quiet, his watch was not. You must be the person who makes inanimate things respond to tone, he said. I change batteries, I said. Same thing, he said, and I knew 2 things at once. He was flirting and he knew how to make it look like an accident. I told him the reader needed a firmware update and asked for a contact name. He gave me one I knew. He gave me his card as if it had landed accidentally in my pocket. Later, when I passed through the lobby to check a leak report in the newsstand, he was there in conversation with a woman who believed lipstick could be a testimony. He lifted his fingers in a hello that felt like a door left on its latch. I lifted mine in a goodbye that felt like another man's apartment. Leon texted at 3, install running late, taking the Ashbury freight elevator for a sculpture that doesn't believe in corners, might crash at the shop, don't wait up. I wrote, be careful, and knew exactly what I meant. The first time I met Cadden anywhere that wasn't my building, he made it seem like maintenance. Drink, he wrote. Someone needs to listen to me, not care about a P and L. We sat in the Ashbury's bar because of course we did, and he watched me the way a surveyor watches a line turn into a claim. He asked what it's like to hold a city's trachea in your hand, and I said the right combination of tools and lies keeps everyone polite. He touched my wrist like he had just learned a new word and said, I like polite men who admit they are. We ended up in a room that began as a discount and turned into an invoice. He kissed me like a man who had memorized the access control manual. He unlocked me politely and then forgot I was a door, and I loved him for forgetting. He put his mouth on my throat where machines start to respect you and asked here, with a Nigerian lilt that turned grammar into grip. I said, now, and for a few minutes I was a body instead of a schedule. He was generous in ways that come from practice and selfish in ways that come from having been thanked too often. We left the lamp on because daylight was part of the bargain now. After, he lay on his back with the expression of a man measuring his own purchase order. "You'll forgive him," he said, as if I had told him anything about Leon. "You'll forgive me," he added, and I recognized the truth that only surfaces in rooms that charge extra for discretion. I went home at 2 in the morning. Leon was not there, and the absence was not a decision. It was gravity. I made myself eggs I didn't want and ate them because I wanted to remember there was a ritual older than desire. In the morning, Leon came in smelling like packing crates and apology. He pressed his mouth to my shoulder and said, "I crashed on the bench in the shop. We had to build a wall for a triptych that didn't respect customs." He saw the index card and touched it with his forefinger like a man reading Braille on his own palm. "Noon," he said, and kissed the back of my neck where I make my meeting agendas. I spent the morning being responsible for other people's miscalculations. The elevators performed a small rebellion. The new tenant on 19 thought thermostats are antagonists. The terrazzo in the lobby sprouted a stain the color of greed. At 11, a security officer emailed me a grainy still from a hallway camera at the Ashbury of two men behaving like a rumor. I recognized my own shoulder and a mouth I had introduced to a conference call. I stared long enough to compose an apology with parts, and then deleted it because some things should be done like a power loss. Sudden, honest, inconvenient. At noon, I told Leon I had cheated. I told him the hotel and the mouth and the way I said yes instead of "this is my building." And he listened the way men do when they know they will regret how kindly they started. He asked, "Do you love him?" Like a CNC machine asks if it's cutting the right line. I said, "I love the version of me he doesn't make responsible," and Leon nodded, which is the meanest mercy in this city. "Here's the price," he said. "No rooms we can't say out loud in our kitchen. And if something is going to break, we finish it before noon and not after midnight, because I will not get good at forgiving you in the morning." I texted Cadden that we could not see each other again. He replied with a sentence that smelled like citrus and contempt. I blocked his number because key control is key control. 3 days later, I found his card in my pocket and threw it away like men who believe in recycling pretend to. The building decided to punish me with a water main break in the garage. I stood in boots as water negotiated with gravity and felt clean for the first time all week. The crew leader was a woman who doesn't treat wrenches like metaphors. She made a gesture that fixed something and went home to a person who deserved her. Then the city reminded us it doesn't like being outrun. A gossip vertical posted a photo of Leon at the Ashbury freight elevator laughing with someone who looked like a sculpture and acted like a man. The caption was "Crates and Mates," which is why people hate publications. I recognized the wristwatch and the kind of grin you can only make if a mistake has already booked the room. I felt the ancient urge to search his pockets for receipts, and instead I went to work because citizens are cheaper than private investigators. Leon and I had the fight dumb men keep rehearsing with better vocabulary. He swore nothing had happened. I said the photograph didn't need his help. He said, "We used the freight elevator to deliver a painting to a bedroom, that's all." I said, "That's a genre." He said, "I love you," and it felt like a contractor promising to be on site before sunrise. I met Cadden once more because we are such men. He waited outside my building with the calm of a man who expects any door to take his badge. "We weren't finished," he said without greeting. I said. "You'll be bored," he said. "I live in a 50-year-old building," I said. "I'm never bored." He smiled and stepped closer and said, "You like power because you can do things with it. I like power because it lets me be lazy. We're good for each other." I did not tell him what power means to a man who unplugs escalators when the city sleeps so they can rest. I walked away. When the service corridor went quiet, the kind of quiet that is either mercy or a short, I checked the master key logs out of superstition. The Ashbury system had been tampered with, not my building, not my problem, and still it felt like someone had learned my password. I called a friend down the street in maintenance who owes me for a compressor, and he said the housekeeper's masters were duplicated twice last month, and management was calling it a training issue. I told him I had a feeling training had bought a plane ticket. At noon, I told Leon that power is just hands and leverage, and we needed to stop pretending work was a substitute for fidelity. He nodded like a dolly rolling over a threshold. He said, "I didn't sleep with anyone," like a citizen. I said, "I believe you," like a schedule. He laughed without humor, and we decided to go to a motel that didn't pretend to be a lifestyle brand and misbehave where rooms are honest. We left our phones in the glove compartment. We kissed like violence and made love like negotiations. He said, "Here," at my throat, and I said, "Now," and he apologized to my shoulder with his mouth for the month we had both tried to outsource intimacy. We came home and practiced a small religion. We kept daylight on. We made coffee and drank it at the wrong hours on purpose. We stood in the kitchen and didn't narrate our versions. We removed the index card and wrote a new one that said "Do it where we can see it." We didn't laminate it. If you need an ending that sets a cone around the wet floor, I can't give it to you. I can tell you the water leak in the garage meant someone's office stayed cool in August. I can tell you the Ashbury fired 2 housekeepers for having master keys they didn't earn, and that felt like punishment looking for a scapegoat. I can tell you Cadden sent a text from a new number that said, "You're good at doors," and I sent back a period because full stops are how we don't get worse. This morning I unlocked the roof at 5 and watched the city line its switches without complaint. I thought about wrenches and rings and the way men pretend lying is a trade. I went back down and kissed Leon at the elevator because romance is cheaper than a new control board. He said, "Noon," and I said, "Noon," and we both smiled like people who know how to read a schedule. The building thanked me by not surprising me. For a few hours at a time, that's enough.